My husband refused to take me or our kids on vacation with his family for 11 years. One day, I found out why after unexpected help from my mill. Nathan was mid-laugh when he saw us. His mouth stayed open, but the sound stopped. His fork was halfway to his plate, a piece of grilled shrimp skewered on the end of it, and it just hung there, dripping cocktail sauce onto the tablecloth, while 12 heads turned one by one to follow his stare. I stood in the doorway of the beach house with my hand on Caleb's shoulder, and Sophie half a step behind me, gripping a faded pink plastic shovel like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Claire. Nathan set the fork down very carefully, the way you'd set down something that might go off. What? How did you? Your mother invited us, I said. Every head at that table turned again, this time toward Linda, who was standing at my shoulder with her arms crossed over her cardigan like she was holding herself together. Aurora, Nathan's ex-wife, seated 2 chairs down from him in a white sundress, her hand resting near a glass of rosé, went very still. Beside her, a 15-year-old girl with Nathan's same stubborn chin lowered her phone and looked at Sophie like she was seeing a ghost. That was Ava, my husband's daughter from his first marriage. The daughter who, according to 11 years of careful math, had somehow always mattered more than mine. Dad? Sophie's voice cracked on the single word. Why is Ava here every summer and we've never once been invited? Nathan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I want to tell you I felt triumphant in that moment. I didn't. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press them flat against my thighs. My stomach had dropped somewhere around the porch steps and hadn't come back up. All I felt was 11 years of quiet accumulating into one unbearable electric silence, and the terrible, dizzying relief of finally not being the only one holding it. To understand how we got to that dining room, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to a plastic beach shovel that sat untouched in a hall closet for over a decade. I'm Claire. I'm 39 years old. I work as a claims adjuster for a regional insurance company, and if there's one professional skill that bled into my personal life more than any other, it's this. I know how to read a paper trail. I know how to notice when 2 people's stories about the same event don't line up, because catching that discrepancy is literally what I get paid to do 5 days a week for people who've had a pipe burst or a car totaled or a roof cave in during a storm. I did not for 11 years apply that skill to my own marriage. I want to be honest about that. I didn't investigate my husband. I trusted him. That's not naivety. Or if it is, it's the ordinary naivety that lets a marriage function at all. The baseline assumption that the person across the table from you at breakfast is telling you the truth about the small things, even if you occasionally disagree about the big ones. Nathan and I got married when Sophie was 2. He came with a daughter from his first marriage, Ava, 3 years older than Sophie, and a whole set of family customs that predated me. One of those customs was a week at the same beach house on the same stretch of North Carolina coast every July, a tradition that had apparently existed since Nathan was a kid, hosted by his parents, Linda and Robert. The first summer we were married, Nathan packed a bag in June and told me, almost as an aside, that this was a family-only trip. It's an old thing, he said. Just my parents, my siblings, my cousins, no spouses historically. It's kind of sacred to my mom. I didn't love it, but I didn't fight it either. Sophie was 4 months old. I told myself it was 1 week, 1 summer, and that next year would probably be different once everyone got used to the idea of a wife in the family. Next year came. Same explanation. The year after that, same. By the time Sophie turned 4, she'd started asking questions. The kind of plain, devastating questions only a 4-year-old can ask. The kind that don't yet know how to be polite about it. Why doesn't Daddy take us to the beach? Nathan crouched down to her level that year, the summer she was 4, and promised her, I remember this so clearly it still makes my throat tight. Next time, sweetheart, I promise. Next time you'll come too. She believed him. She bought a little pink plastic shovel from the dollar store with her own allowance money that August. So it'll be ready, she told me, and she kept it on the shelf above her bed. Every June, when Nathan started packing, she'd look at that shovel like it was a countdown clock. There was never a next time. Our son Caleb came along 2 years after Sophie. By the time he was old enough to understand what June meant in our house, he'd already absorbed the lesson his sister had learned the hard way. Don't get your hopes up. Don't ask. Just watch Dad zip the suitcase and let it happen. I want to be clear about something, because I think it matters for understanding what came later. I never told Nathan I didn't want to go. Not once, not in any conversation, not in any offhand comment he could have twisted into consent. If anything, I raised it nearly every year, gently at first, then less gently, and every year I got some version of the same answer. It's tradition. It's just how my family does things. It's not about you. I believed him because I had no reason not to. Why would a man lie about something so specific, so easily checkable for 11 straight years? I know now that the answer is because nobody ever checked. Escalation Loop 1. The afternoon. Everything cracked. That particular June afternoon started like all the others. Nathan was folding shirts into his suitcase on our bed, methodical, unbothered, the same rotation of packing he'd done for over a decade. 2 swim trunks, a stack of aggressively pastel polos his mother liked, sunscreen. I stood in the doorway with a laundry basket on my hip and watched him do it, and something in me, some low, tired ember that had been smoldering for years, finally caught. Sophie appeared in the hallway behind me before I'd said a word. She was 15 now, tall enough to look Nathan almost in the eye, old enough that her questions had stopped being childlike and started being surgical. Is Ava going? She asked. Nathan didn't look up from from the suitcase. I don't know. You don't know if your own daughter is going on the trip you go on every single year, I said. Claire, Caleb 11, was sitting cross-legged on our bedroom floor with a handheld game console, and even he looked up at that. Will we ever get to go? Nathan gave him the smile. I call it the smile because I'd cataloged it over the years without meaning to. The specific, practiced softness he pulled out whenever a hard question got aimed at him. It was warm. It was disarming. And it was, I understood only much later, a tool, deployed the exact same way every single time to make an inconvenient question dissolve before it could be finished. This is just how my family does vacations, buddy, he said. We are your family, Nathan, I said. You know what I mean. No, I said. I really don't. Explain it to me. Explain it in a way that makes sense for 11 years. His jaw tightened. The only honest thing his face did that whole afternoon. I'm not doing this today. You never do. He zipped the suitcase. The sound of it felt final in a way that had nothing to do with the zipper. He crossed the room, kissed Sophie's forehead like nothing had happened, ruffled Caleb's hair, and walked past me out the door without another word. Caleb just shrugged, going back to his game like the whole exchange had cost him nothing. It's okay, Mom. I didn't really think he'd take us. That shrug did something to me that 11 years of suitcase zipping hadn't managed. It wasn't anger. It was grief. The specific grief of watching your child pre-grieve something before it's even happened to him, because he's learned not to expect better. I told myself it was just Nathan being Nathan, rigid, old-fashioned about family. I rationalized it the way I had every June before this one. It's not really about us. It's just how he was raised. 2 hours later, that rationalization died in our kitchen. Escalation loop 2. The photograph. Sophie walked in holding her phone out in front of her like it was something that might bite her. Mom! The first photo from the beach house was already up. Nathan's family had a group chat and an Instagram habit going back years, something I genuinely never thought to follow closely, because why would I torture myself watching a vacation I wasn't part of? The picture showed the whole clan under a big blue umbrella, everyone in matching sage green shirts that Linda apparently ordered every summer. Robert, Linda, Nathan's 2 younger siblings and their spouses. Their spouses I registered with a jolt, and a scatter of cousins. And directly in the center of the frame, arms slung easily around a woman in a white sundress, stood my husband, beaming. Aurora, his ex-wife, stood pressed against his other side, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, laughing at something outside the frame. Ava stood in front of them both, 15 years old, squinting into the sun, his ex-wife, at the no spouses trip, in the front row. Sophie's voice cracked, reading the caption aloud. Some cheerful line about the whole gang together again, and then she just stopped talking and looked at me. So Ava counts, she said. But we don't. She wiped her eyes fast, angry at herself for crying. I know it's not Ava's fault. She probably doesn't even know we exist half the time. I just want to know what Caleb and I did wrong. That sentence is the one that changed everything for me. Not the photo, not Aurora's arm looped through my husband's. My daughter, 15 years old, asking what she had done to deserve exclusion from a family she'd been born into. Nothing. She had done nothing. And in that kitchen, staring at a phone screen, I stopped protecting Nathan's story for the first time in over a decade. I picked up my phone and called his mother. Escalation loop 3. What Linda didn't know. Linda answered on the second ring, beach house noise humming behind her. Dishes, someone's laughter, a radio playing something with a steel guitar in it. Claire, everything okay? Tell me the truth, Linda. Why have my children never once been invited on this trip? There was a pause, just a half second too long. What are you talking about? 11 summers. Nathan always told me it was your tradition. No spouses, no younger kids. Sophie and Caleb just saw this year's photos. Aurora's in the front row, right next to him. The silence stretched out so long I checked my screen to see if the call had dropped. Then quietly, no. What do you mean, no? Claire. Her voice had dropped to something barely audible, like she was stepping away from the table. Nathan told us you didn't want to come. The kitchen tilted. I actually put a hand on the counter. He said you were uncomfortable being around Aurora and Ava, Linda went on, faster now, like the words had been waiting a long time to get out. He said you didn't want Sophie and Caleb mixed in with his first family, that it would be confusing for them, or hurtful, or I don't even remember exactly, Claire, but he made it sound like your boundary, like he was respecting what you wanted. I never said any of that. Not once. Not to him, not to you, not to anyone. We thought, God, we genuinely thought it was your choice. We love those kids, Claire. I have their school pictures on my refrigerator. I never in 100 years thought. My laugh came out broken. Nothing like a laugh at all. My daughter kept a beach shovel by her bed until she was old enough to be embarrassed by it, because Nathan promised her, when she was 4, that next year she'd finally come. There was never a next year, Linda, because you all thought I was the one saying no. Linda made a small, awful sound on the other end of the line, something between a gasp and a sob. Then she said the words that changed the shape of that night entirely. Bring the children. Come to the beach house tonight. This gets said to his face in front of everyone right now. I hung up and looked at my kids standing in the kitchen doorway, both of them watching me with the particular stillness children get when they know something enormous is happening, but don't yet know its shape. Your grandmother thought we didn't want to come, I told them, for 11 years. That's the story Dad told her. Caleb frowned, working it through with the plain logic of an 11-year-old, but we did want to come. I know, baby. Sophie's arms were crossed so tight across her chest, it looked like she was holding herself upright. I don't even care about the beach anymore, Mom. Mom. I don't care about matching shirts or sandcastles or any of it. I just want him to stop lying about us. Pack an overnight bag, I said. Both of you. Sophie's eyes went wide. We're going tonight? Yes. I went to the hall closet before we left. Behind a box of old winter scarves, exactly where it had sat untouched for 11 years, was the little pink shovel. Sophie held it against her chest like it weighed something. Can I bring it? Absolutely. I didn't call Nathan. I didn't text him a warning. For 11 years, he'd been the only one holding the full map of his own lies. One version for me, a completely different version for his family, and never once did those two versions have to survive contact with each other. Tonight, they would. Escalation. Loop 4. A second lie underneath the first. The drive to the beach house took just under 3 hours. I remember almost none of the highway, just the low murmur of Caleb's game console, muted for once, and Sophie's silence in the passenger seat, the shovel resting across her knees like something ceremonial. Linda was waiting on the porch when we pulled in, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm evening. He's inside. Dinner just started. He has no idea, she said quietly, opening the screen door for us. Robert doesn't know either. None of them do. I took Sophie's hand. Caleb pressed himself against my side the way he used to when he was small, and we walked through the door into the dining room where Nathan sat at the head of a long table, laughing at something his sister had said. Then he saw us. I've already told you what happened in that first frozen moment. The shrimp on the fork, the silence spreading outward from his face like a stone dropped in water, Sophie's cracked question about Ava. What I haven't told you is what happened in the 20 minutes after. Nathan stood up so fast his chair nearly went over. Claire, can we talk outside? No, I said. We're doing this here. Your mother said it should be said in front of everyone, and I agree with her. This isn't the place. You made every place the wrong place for 11 years, Nathan. This is the only place left. Aurora had gone very pale beside her rosé glass. Ava was staring at her phone screen without seeing it, her thumb frozen mid-scroll. Robert, at the far end of the table, looked between his son and his wife with the confused, mounting alarm of a man realizing he'd missed an entire chapter of a story everyone else had apparently been reading for years. Linda called me an hour ago, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected, steadier than I felt. She told me what you told her, that I didn't want the kids coming, that I was uncomfortable around Aurora and Ava, that you were just respecting my boundary. Nathan's face did something complicated, a flicker of calculation, fast, like he was still trying to find an exit even now. Claire, I was trying to keep the peace between everyone. I didn't want— You told me it was your family's rule. No spouses, no younger kids, some old tradition. I looked at Linda. You told her it was my rule, a boundary I never once set. Those aren't— I wasn't lying, I was just— He stopped, started again. It's complicated, okay? Aurora and I co-parent Ava. We've always kept this trip as her time with my side of the family, and I didn't want to upset the balance by— Then why didn't you just say that? Sophie's voice cut through his, louder than I'd ever heard it. Why couldn't you just tell me the truth when I was 4 instead of promising me next time? Why did I keep a shovel by my bed for 11 years for a lie? The room had gone completely silent, except for Sophie's voice and the soft clink of Caleb accidentally bumping a water glass with his elbow. And then Ava, who had said nothing this whole time, who I'd genuinely forgotten was even in the room until she spoke, set her phone face down on the table. Dad told me the same thing, she said quietly. Everyone turned toward her. He told me you didn't want me around, that you weren't comfortable with me, so it was easier if I just came without any of you. Her eyes flicked to Sophie, then to Caleb, something like horror dawning on her face in real time. I thought you guys just didn't like me. I thought that's why I never met my own brother and sister until literally right now. The dining room seemed to hold its breath. Nathan had lied to me. He'd lied to his mother, and he had, it turned out, lied to his own daughter about the reason she'd never known she had a sister and brother, using the exact same trick: pin the exclusion on someone else's discomfort, make it sound like consideration, and never let the two lies meet in a room together. Escalation loop 5. The family splits open. What happened next didn't unfold in a single dramatic beat. It unspooled, messily, over the next hour, the way real confrontations do. Overlapping voices, someone crying in the kitchen, someone else quietly leaving the table altogether. Nathan's younger sister, Priya, was the one who broke the next piece open. She'd been quiet through most of it, arms folded, watching her brother with an expression I couldn't fully read. Finally, she said, Nathan, 3 years ago, when I asked why Claire never came, you told me she said the trip wasn't her thing. Not that it was a rule. You said she chose not to come. Priya, that's not— You told me it was a family-only tradition older than any of us, Robert cut in, and I watched a father's face rearrange itself around a son he was suddenly seeing differently. You told your mother it was Claire's choice. You just told your sister it was Claire's preference. Which one is it, Nathan? Because those are 3 different stories, and I'm starting to think none of them were ever true. Nathan didn't answer. He stood there at the head of the table, the same chair he'd been laughing in 20 minutes earlier, and for the first time in 11 years, I watched him run out of versions of the story to tell. Aurora finally spoke, quietly, mostly to Linda. I always assumed there was some arrangement between Nathan and Claire, some custody thing about Ava that I wasn't part of. He never told me his other kids weren't invited because of me. She looked genuinely stricken. I would never have wanted that. I have never once needed to be the only mother in this family's photos. Caleb tugged my sleeve partway through all this, his 11-year-old voice small under the noise of adults unraveling around him. Mom, is everyone mad at us? No, No, baby, I said, crouching down so I was level with him. Nobody's mad at you. Nobody was ever mad at you or your sister. That's the whole point of tonight. By the time the worst of the shouting settled into the low, exhausted murmur of a family realizing the scope of what had happened, I understood something I hadn't fully grasped driving down. This wasn't really a story about a beach trip. It was a story about a man who had spent over a decade managing separate, incompatible narratives with different people, and who had never once expected those people to sit in the same room and compare notes, because for 11 years, nobody ever had. That night was the end of the deception. It was not the end of the story. We left the beach house a little after 10 that night. Linda hugged both kids so tightly, Caleb made a small surprised sound, and she pressed something into Sophie's hand at the door. I found out later it was a folded 20 and a note that said, "I'm so sorry. I should have called and asked you myself years ago." Nathan didn't follow us to the car. I think some part of him already understood there was nothing left to say that wouldn't make things worse. The drive home was quiet in a different way than the drive there had been. Not tense, just spent. Caleb fell asleep against the window 40 minutes in. Sophie sat with the pink shovel in her lap the whole way, turning it over once in a while like she was checking it was real. "Are you and Dad getting divorced?" she asked, somewhere around the second hour, not looking at me. "I don't know yet," I told her honestly, "but I know I'm done pretending tonight didn't happen, and I know whatever comes next, it's going to be the truth, all the way through. I promise you that." She nodded slowly and went back to looking out the window. I meant that promise, and keeping it turned out to require more than one confrontation at a dinner table, the institutional phase. 2 weeks after that night, I sat across a desk from a family law attorney named Denise Ibarra, who had 18 years of experience and a corner office 2 floors above a dry cleaner's, and I told her the whole story from the beginning. The shovel, the 11 summers, the phone call with Linda, the dining room. "I want to be clear about what I'm hearing," Denise said, tapping her pen against a legal pad where she'd been taking notes in a shorthand I couldn't follow. "This isn't primarily a story about a vacation. It's a pattern of deception that touches custody, and potentially touches how any separation gets structured. If he's willing to construct 3 different false narratives to 3 different people about something this specific, a judge is going to want to understand that pattern when we talk about parenting time and decision-making." She had me start pulling together documentation, screenshots of the Instagram posts going back years, the group chat exchanges Linda forwarded me once she started genuinely digging through her own phone in horror, even old text threads between Nathan and me where I'd raised the vacation question and gotten some version of the same deflection every time. My adjuster instincts, it turned out, were useful for something other than water damage claims. I built a timeline the way I'd build a timeline for a contested claim. Dates, sources, direct quotes, no editorializing. "This is remarkably well organized," Denise told me at our second meeting, flipping through the folder I'd brought her. "Most people bring me a shoebox of receipts and a lot of feelings. You brought me Exhibit A through Exhibit J." I also, on Denise's recommendation, met with a family therapist named Marcus Felden for the kids, 22 years in practice, specializing in adolescent response to parental conflict, who spent most of the first session simply letting Sophie and Caleb talk without me in the room. "What Sophie's carrying isn't really about the beach," he told me afterward, in a debrief that lasted maybe 10 minutes, but that I've replayed more times than I can count. "It's about 11 years of being quietly told in the smallest possible increments that she wasn't worth a fight. Kids don't need every promise kept. They need the promises that get broken to at least be told to them honestly in real time, instead of a decade later at a dinner table." The third figure in this part of the story was, unexpectedly, Nathan's own mother. Linda hired a lawyer of her own, not against Nathan, but to formalize something she insisted on, a separate, standing arrangement giving her and Robert regular time with Sophie and Caleb, independent of whatever happened between Nathan and me. Her attorney, a soft-spoken older man named Walter Greer, who'd apparently handled the family's affairs for over 20 years, called me directly to confirm the paperwork. "Mrs. Linda has been very clear that she wants this documented properly," he told me. "She said, and I'm quoting her here, that she let vagueness cost 11 years and doesn't intend to let it cost any more. Crisis peak." The paperwork sat on my kitchen table for 6 days before I could make myself sign it. Denise had walked me through it twice. A proposed separation agreement, temporary custody terms, a mediation date already scheduled for the following week. Nathan had, to his credit, not fought the broad strokes of it. He'd moved into his brother's guest room. He'd started therapy of his own, according to Linda, though I had no way to verify that and didn't especially care to. But there was one clause Denise flagged that stopped me cold. A standard provision about relocating the children more than 50 miles from their current school district without written consent from both parents. My company had, 3 months earlier, offered me a regional promotion, a real one, a genuine step up, based 2 states away. I hadn't told Nathan about it. I hadn't told anyone about it, actually, except Denise, because until that dinner table, I hadn't let myself seriously consider taking it. Now the deadline for accepting the position was in 9 days, and the custody terms, once signed, would tie Sophie and Caleb's school district to this county for at least the next year, promotion or not. I sat at that kitchen table at 11 at night with the offer letter open on my laptop screen and the custody paperwork spread out beside it, and for the first time since the beach house, I felt something close to panic. Not the sharp adrenaline kind, but the slow, grinding kind. The kind where where your hands go cold and you keep rereading the same paragraph without absorbing a single word of it. I had 9 days to decide between a career opportunity I genuinely earned and a custody arrangement that would keep my kids' lives stable in the one place they still recognized as home, at the exact moment their home had just been blown open. I called Denise the next morning before work, my coffee going cold on the counter. I can't do both, I told her. I don't see how. You might not have to choose as starkly as you think, she said, but you need to decide this week what you actually want, because if you wait past the mediation date, the terms get harder to renegotiate later, not easier. I thought about Sophie's voice in the car. I just want him to stop lying about us. And I thought about the promotion. And I thought, honestly, about how tired I was of building my entire life around decisions Nathan had made unilaterally for 11 years. I turned down the promotion, not out of martyrdom. I want to be honest about that too, because this isn't a story about a woman sacrificing everything nobly. I turned it down because when I actually sat with what I wanted, underneath the exhaustion and the anger, what I wanted was for my kids to have one parent who didn't uproot their life without telling them why. The promotion would come around again, or another one would. Sophie's 15. She doesn't have 11 more summers to spare rebuilding trust in a new town on top of everything else this year had already cost her. I signed the custody paperwork 4 days later, at Denise's office, with Sophie and Caleb's school schedule staying exactly where it was. Resolution. The mediation itself was almost anticlimactic after everything that led to it, which I've come to understand is often how these things actually end. Not in another dramatic dinner table confrontation, but in a quiet conference room with a court-appointed mediator, 2 attorneys, and a lot of careful, unglamorous paperwork. Nathan didn't contest primary custody. He agreed to alternating weekends and a standing Wednesday dinner, terms Marcus Felden had helped Sophie and Caleb articulate in their own words during a joint session none of us adults were present for. He also, at Denise's insistence, and somewhat to my surprise, agreed to a written statement, not a public one, nothing dramatic, just a formal acknowledgement filed alongside the custody agreement, that the children's exclusion from the family vacation had been his decision, communicated falsely to multiple parties, and not the result of any boundary set by me. It wasn't a courtroom verdict. Nobody perp-walked him out of anywhere, but it existed on paper with his own signature under it, which mattered more to me than I expected it to. The consequences beyond the legal ones were quieter, and in some ways heavier. Nathan's relationship with his parents didn't recover the way I think he assumed it eventually would. Robert, particularly, struggled with what it meant that his son had spent over a decade constructing a story specifically designed so his own family would never think to double-check it against mine. Priya stopped inviting Nathan to things she used to include him in automatically. Not out of cruelty, she told me once, almost apologetically, but because she said she didn't fully trust what he told her anymore, about anything, and that not trusting your own brother was a strange, grieving kind of consequence nobody warns you about. Ava reached out to Sophie directly about 6 weeks after that night. First a follow request, then an actual message. They've been texting on and off since, slowly, cautiously. 2 girls who apparently spent their entire childhoods being told, separately, that the other one's family didn't want them around, now trying to figure out what an actual relationship between them might look like, unmediated by their father's version of events. Aurora, for her part, sent me a short, careful email a few weeks after everything settled. She said she was sorry she'd never once thought to just call and ask me directly in 11 years whether the arrangement was really what I wanted. I appreciated it. I also told her gently that she hadn't done anything wrong by attending a trip she'd been invited to in good faith. The failure wasn't hers, and I didn't want her carrying guilt that belonged entirely to Nathan. Epilogue. It's been a little over a year now. Sophie turns 16 next month. She kept the pink shovel. It sits on a shelf in her room these days, not hidden in a closet anymore, just there, a small, strange artifact of the 11 years before this one. She asked me once if it was weird that she still had it. I told her I thought it made perfect sense. Some things you hold on to not because you're still waiting for them, but because they remind you how long you were willing to wait for something that was never actually going to come, and that's worth remembering, even after you've stopped waiting. Caleb is 12 now and considerably more talkative than he was that spring. He went to the beach this July, actually, not with Nathan's family, but with 2 friends from his soccer team and their parents. A completely unremarkable, unloaded trip that he still brought up at dinner for a week afterward like it was the best thing that had happened to him all year. Maybe it was. There's something to be said for an ordinary vacation, after a childhood spent watching an extraordinary one leave without you. Nathan and I are civil. Genuinely, if carefully, civil. The kind of civil that took real, deliberate work on both our parts. Not the kind that happens automatically once enough time passes. He shows up for his Wednesdays. He's stopped, as far as I can tell, telling different people different versions of things. Though I'll admit some part of me still checks. Out of 11 years of habit, more than active suspicion. I never went back to that beach house. I don't think I need to. I got what I actually went there for that night. Not a vacation, not an apology performed for an audience, just the simple, overdue experience of every person who'd been lied to finally hearing the same true story, in the same room, at the same time. Sophie asked me recently if I regretted turning down the promotion. I told her no, without having to think about it. Some decisions only look like sacrifices from the outside. From where I was sitting, it was just the first time in a long while that a choice about our family's life was mine to make honestly, instead of something decided quietly, elsewhere, by someone who'd never bothered to ask.